Hi there, this is Matt with State of Flux here with my ranking video of every Godzilla movie ever that's live action. Apparently there are a couple that are animated that are on Netflix. I'll get to them someday, but that's a future commitment. For now, we will stick with the live action ones, and this will be my complete ranking. We're going to do it in ascending order, so we're going to start with the worst and work our way to the best. And I encourage you to let me know what your rank is, or at least your top 5 and maybe even bottom 5, because that's pretty fun too. So, to kick things off, we are going to start in 33rd place. All Monsters Attack, also known as Godzilla's Revenge. This movie is a piece of crap, which is wild because it's directed by the guy who made the original Gojira, Ishiro Honda, and this was even Ishiro Honda's favorite film that he directed in the Godzilla franchise. I don't get it. It does have some interesting things to say about bullying, but if you are not a very small child, you will not be able to handle this movie. It's basically a best-of clip show that is mind-numbing. Cannot watch, do not recommend. Moving on to 32nd place, or I don't know how to do this. Boom, boom, will not do hands. Anyway, moving on to 32nd place. This is one that a lot of people really like, and I found it just, like, so annoying, and that is Godzilla Raids Again. Also known as Gigantus the Fire Monster, I guess. But yeah, Godzilla Raids Again, not my thing. The ending with the Godzilla just constantly roaring, it was so obnoxious. I could not handle it, and the ending just goes on forever. It hits a lot of the same beats as that first Godzilla movie, as most sequels kind of do when they're the first out sequel. It's just a rehash of what came before. This included a new monster, and I love Megaguirus. This is the introduction of that character, but outside of that, this movie has no relevancy, and we're gonna move on to 31st place, Godzilla vs. Megalon. There's some charm to this. I kind of like Jet Jaguar, but this is truly a Jet Jaguar. A movie Godzilla has less than 10 minutes of screen time. He's hardly in it. Megalon, while being a cool-looking monster, doesn't really offer much. The movie has a strong framework where the first 10 minutes are pretty solid, the last 10 minutes are pretty solid. Everything in between is a snooze fest. Moving on to 30th spot is Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. And at the time when this came out, this probably was like the Avengers of the Godzilla universe, or the Kaiju universe, or whatever they wanted to call it in the Showa era. This had Godzilla and Rodan and Mothra team up against Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. Oh my! Kind of cool, great idea, really boring. The monsters are subtitled. I don't know what's going on, man. That was weird. Moving on to 29th place. This is a movie I watched a lot when I was a kid, and that is King Kong versus Godzilla, the 1965 version. Loved it when I was a kid, did not respond well to it as an adult. It is very cringy, very, very unfortunately racist, and I mean, that's keeping in tone with a lot of the King Kong properties, honestly, but the racism in this, even if it's unintentional, is so cringeworthy. I could not recommend. And I watched this one with my child. I had to pause it a few times and be like, that's not appropriate. This was made in a different era, and so, I mean, it is a good tool for that, teaching young people how times have changed and representation has changed. But outside of that, not worth exploring. Moving on to, let's see, we're in 28th spot with Godzilla 2000. This was the Japanese response to American Godzilla saying, hey, you ruined our property, we're going to show you how it's done, and guess what? They didn't. It's not that good. It has an interesting bad guy, but hot damn if this is not a boring piece of junk. Moving on to the 27th spot, Godzilla vs. Gigan. Gigan is probably Godzilla's coolest looking monster. Very rarely is Gigan in a particularly good movie, and that's pretty unfortunate. But outside of the battles with Gigan, this movie is just completely skippable. That said, I do have like some appreciation for the movie because when the battles happen, it goes hard. For whatever reason, it just becomes like a gore fest anytime Godzilla's battling this Megaguirus, and it's just wild how bloody this movie randomly gets when it's surrounded by movies that are like literally made for young children. But whatever. Moving on to 26th spot, we have Terror of Mechagodzilla. This isn't bad movie per se, but it is not a great one. This is the first of like the okay bunch. And Terror of Mechagodzilla, I like the Frankenstein-y quality that is brought in with like the woman robot and whatnot. And I like the main adversary, but Godzilla seems like an afterthought to the film, and so does Mechagodzilla. Why is this Mechagodzilla even in this movie? Outside of him having relevance in the title, he has no relevance in any other part of the film. So there you have it. It's just kind of one of those weird, awkward ones. Moving on to our 25th spot, we have Son of Godzilla. This is a movie I did not like when I was a kid, but watching it with a young kid, it is really fun. My kid really was engaged by Godzilla's son, Minya. There's some cute stuff going on with Godzilla parenting young kaiju. It has the creepy spider monster, so like there's some good to be had here. And it has a really kind of powerful ending shot that that sort of lingers with you. Moving on to the 24th spot in a controversial statement on this film, we have Godzilla, the American one from 1998. I don't hate the movie. It's not particularly good. It's structured like a rom-com for whatever reason, and then they just throw a giant monster in there, and I don't necessarily get the like lean to do that. That said, the monster stuff is really good, particularly the Madison Square Garden, and yeah, it feels very Jurassic Parky. Godzilla's spawn is very representative of Velociraptors. Godzilla himself, when he's running through the city, is very reminiscent of the ending of The Lost World. I have some appreciation for that. Basically, if you skip all the human element of the movie, it's pretty darn watchable. And let's be honest, in a lot of those early Showa movies, anyway, you were fast-forwarding through the human stuff, just getting to the monster battle. So, it's on point to some extent. It is just a bad interpretation of Godzilla. If they'd called this film Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, I think people would have liked it. It's just not Godzilla. Moving on to Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla in our 23rd spot. Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla is the only one of the Heisei era that isn't particularly good. I think the Heisei era was our best era of Godzilla consistently. This movie was the weakest of the bunch. However, it had the most script tampering and rewrites, and had they gone with its original incarnation, I think it would have been a very good movie, but budgetary limitations and various other things led to the movie that we got, which is not particularly compelling. Alright, moving forward in the 22nd spot onwards are movies that are good Godzilla movies. So we're going to start with our first Godzilla movie that is good in our 22nd spot with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, 1975. This one has kind of a neat alien subplot, but the alien stuff is shot very well. I like the look of this film, and Mechagodzilla makes for a great adversary against Godzilla. It has a really strong opening, too, where you think Godzilla is a monster, a villain again, but it's not, and it's got it's the Mechagodzilla in disguise, and that's kind of neat. Moving on to the 21st spot, we have Invasion of Astro Monster. This is basically a restatement of Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, the movie that had come just before it. A reinterpretation of that, but done considerably better, and a movie that you will see get remade pretty soon, and I'll discuss that a couple down from here. Moving on to 20th spot, Godzilla, or Mothra versus Godzilla, the 1964 version. This is the last time you see in the Showa era Godzilla being a true villain, Mothra being the hero. As a sequel to Mothra, it's pretty alright. As a continuation of Godzilla vs. Kong, it's pretty alright. This is a much beloved one, and of the early Showa monster movies, this is certainly one of the best. Moving on to, in 19th spot, Destroy All Monsters. This was the original series finale of Godzilla in the Showa era. However, it proved so successful, they kept making them for many, many more. But Destroy All Monsters has a lot of cool set pieces. This, along with Invasion of Astro Monster, would eventually become Godzilla Final Wars, but we will discuss that when we discuss Final Wars. Destroy All Monsters is a fun film and worth your time if you're a fan of the Showa era. Moving on to 18th spot, we have Godzilla, King of the Monsters, 2019, the American Godzilla King of the Monsters, which I guess the other one was too, but this one is the purely American one, the one with Millie Bobby Brown. This movie's okay, it's alright, it's got great monster stuff, the human element is so dismissible. Vera Farmiga and her villainous turn almost make the movie work, but it just kind of falls flat and is genuinely forgettable of the three other films. Or next to the three other films. Moving on to, in 17th spot, Ebirah, Horror of the Deep. This one has a charm to it. It was supposed to be King Kong versus the giant, lobster, but it ended up turning into a Godzilla film. I have a lot of fun with this. It's a good movie, and yeah, I acknowledge that Godzilla plays volleyball with the lobster. I had fun with that. It was the 60s. What are you gonna do? Moving on to 16th spot, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 from the Heisei era. This one did some really interesting re-tinkering with the Mechagodzilla formula and having Mechagodzilla essentially be a good guy powered like a Power Ranger or a Megazord or whatever. That was kind of a unique take that I appreciated. Moving on to 15th spot, Godzilla vs. Mothra, The Battle for Earth. This one's really cool. I love Batara. That was such a unique and interesting bad guy for them to go against. Godzilla is kind of neutral evil in this as well, Mothra being the hero. And it kind of pushes forward Mothra's story. It expands on the lore. It has that really engaging opening scene that's very reminiscent of an Indiana Jones film. I had fun with it. It's a good movie. Moving on to 14th spot, Godzilla Final Wars, the Millennium Era series finale of the Godzilla franchise, this time bringing back all the Showa era monsters, and it's fun, but very busy movie. Like, so busy. So much is going on. It's kind of obnoxious, but I can't help but have fun at times throughout watching it, to the point where it lingers with me that the positives are so positive that I stick with it. It's probably not as good as some of the other movies I've mentioned underneath it, but I stand by where my placement is in 14th spot. In 13th spot, we have Godzilla Tokyo SOS. This is a direct sequel to the original Mothra, and that was kind of neat. Then they throw in Godzilla and Mechagodzilla in there. It made for a really entertaining movie and continuation of a Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, which we'll be talking about here shortly. In 12th spot, we have Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, the version from 1991. The time travel elements of this are really cool, bringing Godzilla down to the villain he once was, making Ghidorah kind of a heroic figure, then a villainous figure, and then ultimately kind of a mecha-powered hero. That was a unique spin on Ghidorah, so I approve. This one was creative and had a lot of good energy to it. In 11th spot, we have Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. This movie retinkered with the whole idea of Mechagodzilla once more, and had it be powered by the bones of the original Godzilla from 1954. That was kind of unique as a deterrent against kaijus that are being used by the government agency to stop any other big bad monsters. That was kind of a neat spin. I dug it, and kind of furthered what Heisei did in their era. Alright, up next are my top 10, and these are all varying degrees of excellent Godzilla movies. So, in the 10th spot, we have The Return of Godzilla from 1984. This was the anniversary special that was really the first reboot, I think, of, or first legacy sequel that I could ever think of, in the sense that it erased all prior canon and reduced everything back down to just the original movie and this one. Did it before Halloween did it before any other of these franchises. This is the one to do it first. And hot damn, they did a great job. The explanation for Godzilla's return isn't necessarily the most strong, however, Godzilla's return in it is powerful. He is a force to be reckoned with, and the movie is trying to say something intellectually, and that is always a plus. Alright, in number 9 spot, we have Godzilla 2014, the second attempt by the United States to make Godzilla work, and boy howdy, it was good upon a second viewing. The first time, I did not respond well to it because it was misadvertised. The second time I watched it, I saw the movie that they were trying to make as a movie as a whole, and it is so good. It is making one of these kaiju movies from the perspective of the man on the ground looking up at these titans in the sky, battling it out. And it put into perspective the scale of these things and the human desperation of trying to survive it. It is a very good movie, but it is one that you have to watch multiple times to really gain the qualities from it. Gareth Edwards did a great job. Bryan Cranston kills it, and unfortunately when they killed him, it left a sour taste, and a lot of people don't like the movie because of that. However, if you didn't like it, give it another shot. It is worth it. Alright, moving into my number 8th spot. This is a movie that most people don't like, and I don't get it. I think it's fantastic. This is Godzilla vs. Megaguirus from the Millennium era. Again, reducing everything down to just the original film, and this one a direct sequel to that original film, and I think it's really good. If this had been the series finale of Godzilla, it would have been a very impactful and powerful one. Outside of the final shot of the movie, this movie is extraordinarily good. I like the action battle. I like how it kind of takes a jab at the US by repurposing their planned sequel to Godzilla 1998 for the purposes of this, and showing us how it's done genuinely right. Good movie, check it out. In number 7 spot, we have Godzilla vs. Kong, the American version of this movie from just a couple years back. This is the most fun, I think, inarguably the most fun Godzilla movie out there. The battles are great. This is the best looking Godzilla movie out there as well. The colors of the sepia and like the orange and green is just very strong, and I like the visual output of this film. Battles are good, characters are fun and funny, it builds the mythology. Good movie, recommend. Number 6 spot, we have Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters, All Out Attack. This one is a fascinating reinvention of all of these characters, and they all have a different mythology that is brought to it for this specific unique movie, made by the guy who did the trilogy of Gamera films in the 90s that were so exceptionally well done. He knocks it out of the park with this one. Godzilla is a true villainous threat. Ghidorah, of all creatures, is the hero that we must stand behind. Mothra has a couple great moments. Mothra, all three of them are really changed into something unique for this one-off film. And let's not forget Baragon. We get to see Baragon's return, and it's kind of neat. Moving on to my number 5 spot, we have Godzilla vs. Destoroyah. This was the finale of the Heisei era, and hot damn, it was a good one. This brought the horror back into the Godzilla for the first time since the original Godzilla movie. It has some parts that are genuinely scary, but it also has emotional heft. When Godzilla's kin dies, you feel it. When Godzilla himself becomes a nuclear destruction, the thing that he's always been a threat and an allegory for, he becomes himself when he goes into combustion, and it is a powerful conclusion to the world of Godzilla, and even brings back a couple actors from that original 1954 one to really take that home. Excellent movie. Moving on to number 4 spot. This one is also kind of a hit or miss one with people, but I really like it because I love the allegory, and my number 4 spot is Godzilla vs. Hedorah, also known as Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. Next to the original Godzilla, this is the best of the Showa-era films. Fight me. It is the most creative and unique in the visual storytelling. It uses animation to tell the story. It uses vignettes, voiceovers, montage. It is you could use this as like an example in a class of different filmmaking techniques to tell a story. Its framework around a child does not mean that it is aimed specifically for children, but this is a really strong message to it about pollution and our involvement in it, and what the monster that can grow beyond our control if we don't enact change. This movie is heavy-handed, yeah, maybe, but hot damn if it is not fantastic. Moving to the number 3 spot, we have Godzilla vs. Biollante, the best of the Heisei-era films. Biollante is a phenomenal monster. It's built from Godzilla, or spawned from Godzilla's own DNA, so it's kind of like Godzilla battling himself to some extent. It has cool powers. I like the visual imagery that it has with the roses and the death of a character and how that spawns new life into the world through this creature. Striking visual imagery. The storytelling is very reminiscent of the novel Parasite Eve, which I think even came out after this. I'm wondering to the point if it was not inspired by this movie on some level. But check this out. Excellent action. Excellent Godzilla usage, cool gunplay. It acts like a Terminator film or a Better Tomorrow or something for a little while. Moving on to my second favorite Godzilla movie is Shin Godzilla. This is a repurposing of the original film to bring attention to the Japanese tragedy in 2011 where government inaction led to a evolving problem growing outside of the realm of their control. Godzilla is used as an allegory to establish that, and it is fantastic. It is also horrifying. Godzilla on screen as a monster is scary as can be. It is weird, it is violent, it is horrifying, it evolves the character of Godzilla beyond what he was ever originally created for, and I love it. I kind of wish that this new movie coming out, it would be a continuation of that. I don't think that's a movie we're going to get, but if it is, I am there. Moving on to my number 1 film in the Godzilla mythos is the original Gojira. This movie is in my top 10 favorite films. It is a smart film, an allegory for the ghost of the atomic bomb that dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki back in 1945. This film kind of is the Japanese working through those tragic events and how it works as a mad scientist movie. Godzilla is birthed from science, and science is the thing that can take him down. However, the mad scientist isn't traditionally mad scientist in that he's the villain. He's the reluctant hero that knows the power with which he has control over, and in the wrong hands, it can create a problem just as strong as Godzilla. That is unique, that is fantastic. That is a perfect film, an easy 4-star film. There you have it. My top 5, Gojira, Shin Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Biollante, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, and Godzilla vs. Destoroyah. What are your top 5? What are your bottom 5? Let me know in the comments down below. Feel free to massacre my list, but if you're going to do so, supply your own. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.